Hey there, Thomas from Bricks here. In today's video, I'm going to show you the highlights of the brand new Bricks 1.4, a release that was different in many ways, especially in terms of the development cycle and time frame. We'll definitely go back to a more frequent release cycle, but this update with more than 300 changes just required more time, more testing. That's also why I released a beta and an RC1 and RC2 is something we've never done before, just to make sure this massive update is as stable as possible. I also want to thank everyone who has helped test this beta and the release candidates. There was a lot of great discussions in the forum. I really enjoyed talking with a lot of you, so thank you very much. Also for everyone who has provided updates for different languages, updated the translations for Bricks 1.4. Now, besides the new features that we're going to have a look at, there are also some big parts of the builder that are not really apparent. It's just more like the underlying structure that we actually spend a lot of development time in this 1.4 update. One of them is a basically complete rewrite of the builder. There were some third-party tools that we used or that we relied upon up until now. We now have native solutions for them inside of the builder. One of them is the state management, and the other one is the entire drag and drop and sorting functionality. So we swapped out those components, and now we have our own custom solutions, which also should allow for much more snappy and accurate interaction when you perform all kinds of actions inside the builder. I think it's important that we keep spending time on making sure that everything is as up-to-date and optimized as possible to ensure Bricks is up for any task in the years to come. Now, another, but this probably much more apparent feature, especially if you add your own custom CSS and you also pay a lot of attention to performance, is now the optimized HTML output on the front end, but also inside the builder. So we had a lot of div wrappers basically around every element. There was a div wrapper, meaning if you had 200 elements on a page, which can easily happen, you would have 200 kind of unnecessary div tags on just a single page as well, which of course can also create an additional lag and longer loading times. If you write custom CSS, also, now it's much easier. We don't have any additional wrappers inside of the builder, something that we had prior to Bricks 1.4. If you inspect the source code, you will find a structure similar to the one that you can see here in this screenshot. We have a container, a heading, and a button. So you can see the structure now is much cleaner and much leaner compared to everything that came before 1.4. Now, in terms of new features, once we jump into the builder, I quickly will show you the new improved WooCommerce builder. You can now visually create your cart and checkout pages in Bricks. So that's phase 2 of the WooCommerce builder. Inside of Bricks phase 3, which we're also going to tackle, it's going to include the account page as well. Now, there's some other cool features, for example, syncing of your theme styles between your open browser tabs. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to show you this in a minute. Same goes for saving of changes. And then in terms of dynamic data, we of course also added quite a lot of new features and improvements. The highlights, I would say, is probably the custom field support for the Jet Engine product suite. Then also the Jet Engine repeater we now support. We support ACF repeaters and groups and MetaBox groups as well. Relationship fields inside the query loop we support for ACF, and in the next update 1.4.1 we're also going to support MetaBox and Jet Engine relationships. Now, if you want to run PHP functions, you can actually also do this now inside of dynamic data tags. You can just click on this link here. Brings you to the Academy article that explains this whole concept in more detail. Now, another cool addition or improvement in terms of performance is that we completely removed jQuery from the front end. At least Bricks itself doesn't rely on it anymore. Of course, if you have a plugin that's enqueuing jQuery, it's still going to be loaded on the front end, but Bricks by itself does not require jQuery. Now, if you have written some custom JavaScript and you like to use jQuery as a library, you can definitely continue using it. Just copy and paste those few lines of code here to your Bricks child theme, and jQuery will be loaded as it was before. Now, once you perform the update, if you're using the external files loading method, definitely regenerate your CSS files. There's so many changes now in terms of CSS happening in Bricks 1.4. Definitely make sure to regenerate those CSS files. If you are a developer and you have written your own custom elements of PHP, there's a little line of code here that you need to update to make sure that the element ID and element classes are properly added to the render function. Also updated our Academy article here as well. And if you have written any custom CSS, you don't need to manually go over every element or your page settings or your global settings, and to replace those classes, you can just run the new converter. Okay, I'm gonna show you how to do this later on in this video as well. There's some other noteworthy changes which you can go over on your own. I just want to make sure that you're aware of those. And if you want to have a look at the full changelog, everything that changed, because we're not going to touch all 300 changes, we'll have a full list here of all the new features. And you can see how long that list is. All of the improvements as well, and all of the bug fixes too. All right, let's come to the fun part and jump into the builder. And I think we're going to start by quickly having a look how you can create your cart and your checkout pages visually in Bricks. If you're not using WooCommerce, just make sure to go into the video description and click on the timestamp to jump to the next section. All right, I'm now inside here of the template screen in my WordPress dashboard, and you can see I've got two new templates here. One is the WooCommerce cart and the other one is the WooCommerce checkout. Now, I'm not going to build those from scratch. If you have created single product pages and your product archive pages with Bricks, you know how this works. It's pretty similar with the checkout and the cart as well. There's just a few different elements. Now, what you can do, and what I would recommend you to do, is to go to the Bricks Academy, academy.bricks.io, and then here under Builder, you will have this WooCommerce category or topic with articles about all of those different pages. This was already possible prior to 1.4, and the cart and checkout are now added in 1.4. Now, if you click on the cart article, it actually explains you the template types here for the cart, and for the empty cart as a template type. For the checkout, we also have 4 different template types actually. Okay, so we have new elements, the cart items here, the cart totals here, and also the cart coupon. And I think those are also the 3 that I added in my template here. Let's just go to the cart first, edit with Bricks. And as you can see here, just added this heading so you can see on the front end what's being rendered. You can see my cart items. You can have various settings here. I actually disable the coupons because there's a coupon element and I want to show the coupons somewhere else. So I made sure I'm not including them here as well. Now, if you want to hide a certain column, you can just do that by hiding it here through those checkboxes. If you want to hide the thumbnail, you can just click here. Want to hide the name, want to hide the quantity. You can do this right here. Okay, cart coupon, that one is rather simple. It's just this element here. If we want to place this somewhere else, not inside the cart items element, you can do this anywhere on your page. And the cart totals down here, in my case, I'm hiding the cross sales. You can also hide the title, put in a custom heading, anything you want, really. Okay, that's the cart. You don't need to assign any template conditions for your cart and your checkout because you're just going to have one cart page on your homepage, on your website anyway. So the only thing that you really need to do is just when you create a new template, make sure you set it to WooCommerce cart. It's going to pick up, it's going to be rendered in your cart page automatically according to the template type. There's also an empty cart. If you want to show something completely different when the cart is empty compared to when it's filled with a product, you can use this template right here. Okay, moving on to our checkout. You can see here, I've got my checkout template type, WooCommerce checkout. Let's have a look. I'm gonna close my cart, and this is my checkout. Again, we also have an Academy article here talking about the checkout and the different template types for the different checkout pages. In this video, I'm just gonna show you the main checkout page, but you also have one for the payment screen, for the thank you screen, and for the order received screen as well. Same as with the cart, you don't need to set any template conditions, just to make sure you select the correct template type. In terms of elements, I'm going to add a customer details and the order review element. If we go to the builder, you can see on the left, I've got my customer details. You can remove stuff from the billing field here. If you want to remove, for example, the company name, you can just click here and this removes the company name just like that. You can hide the title if you want to add a custom title. If you want to hide all of the labels, you can hide them just like that. You can change the typography. You can hide the additional information. A lot of different settings here for you to utilize. On the right-hand side, we've got our order review. Again, you can set multiple various settings here. In my case, I actually also enabled or added a sticky position. So you can see as I scroll down my checkout screen, this element scrolls with it simply by setting this to sticky and then the top position to 30 pixels. So it has some breathing room to the top of the browser viewport. And that's really everything you need to know in terms of the checkout and the cart templates, now available in Bricks 1.4. Now, really cool feature. It was not that easy to actually bring to fruition is this auto sync of all of the global data inside the builder. So when you work with global elements, let's say you create a global element or you create a global class or pseudo element, and you have multiple browser tabs open. Prior to Bricks 1.4, there was no way for you that you would get those changes into your other tab. You basically need to reload the entire tab and then you could see and work with a new class, for example. Now in Bricks 1.4, this is actually happening automatically. And I'm going to show you quickly by opening this blank page here and by opening this very simple sub page here. Okay, as you can see, I only have a heading here. And what you can do now when you make a change, for example, to the theme styles, let's just say my headings, I change the color to this pinkish color. So you click here, now obviously it updates inside the builder, but also inside any other open builder instance in any of your tabs here on this computer. So if I go back to my sub page now, you can see this automatically updated. I don't need to refresh anything, it just happens in the background. And if I would perform a change here now, and say I want to change this pink actually to this reddish color, and then I go back to the other tab, you can see it's also automatically updated as well. And this also works when you have 10 different browser tabs open. Doesn't really matter, but it only works on the computer that you're currently working on. Okay, and this works for, like I said, also global classes. So let's just say I would add or edit a global class. Let's say my test class here, which is also using this color. Now let's just say I also want to make everything uppercase. Okay, so this was a change to my class. And now if I would use the same class on this page, you can actually see it's using the styles that I just defined in this other tab. And it's working with all kinds of global data, or all global data inside the builder. Also with your pinned elements, with your color palettes, pseudo clauses as well. So if I would pin an element, let's just say I'm going to pin my container here, Okay, so it's pinned. Now I go to another tab, have a look at the elements. You can see this container is pinned now as well. If I unpin it and I go to the other tab, you can see instantly it's unpinned as well. So this should help with the development workflow a lot, save a lot of unnecessary reloads and builder saves. So I think this is a great addition in Bricks 1.4. Also, if you're working in a team, and this was a little bit unclear for a lot of users, I hope this makes a little bit more sense now when I explain it in the video, is the saving of only the data that has actually changed while you edit the page, this item here. So prior to Bricks 1.4, because we have all kinds of data, like in this case now you saw I changed my global class, I changed the theme styles. So I'm actually working with a lot of different data, also the content itself. Now prior to Bricks 1.4, every time you hit save, either by clicking on the icon or by using the Command S keyboard shortcut, all the data that was inside the builder was saved. So if you only worked on your content, your theme styles and everything else was updated as well. Now this is not really a problem when it's only you working on a website, but just imagine you work on this website, you only work on the content of the homepage, and someone else is working on the theme styles, somewhere else on a different computer, making a change, saving the change. In the meantime, you're still working on this page here, only changing the content. You hit save. Now what's going to happen in the background is that your changes, your theme styles, which are now actually updated, are going to be saved in the database because they differ from the ones that your colleague just saved. So this basically caused a lot of unwanted overrides, which now should not happen anymore. Now this is a little bit of an experimental feature. So if you encounter an instance where you make a change to the content, you hit save and your saves are not really persisted on the front end, you can still see your old content. Definitely let us know in the forum and make use of the new force save keyboard shortcut. So this is Command Control Shift and S. This basically forces all data in the builder to be saved, not just the one that you edited. So if you go to the keyboard shortcuts, you can actually see this one here as well. Command Control Shift S makes sure all the data inside the builder is saved. If you only hit Command Control S, it's only going to save the changes that actually occurred inside the builder. Okay, sorry for the long rant. I'm trying to explain it as best as I can, but yeah, that's how it works. Okay, another cool addition in Bricks 1.4 is the history panel. We talked about this a little bit already, and I showcased this on Facebook. Now, if we go here to the, previously it was just only the revisions tab, now it's also the history tab, you can actually see the changes that you perform inside of the builder. So the steps you see here are the same steps that you actually go through when you click undo or redo. Okay, so in my case now I edited this test class. So if I'm gonna undo, you can see now my change that I did here on this heading is undone. Okay, so then I'm back at this step. If I go one step further, I'm actually at the starting point where I started editing this page. Okay, and this history is only a snapshot, a list of snapshots of the actions that you performed in while this tab is open. If I'm reloading the browser now, we're gonna have an empty history just with this starting action. If you wanna see revisions, which are generated every time you save or an autosave occurs, those are still available here. Nothing changed there. Okay, now next up I want to actually spend some minutes to show you some of the workflow enhancement and time-saving features that are not really obvious, they're actually really handy to know about. And we're going to start off with the container layouts that you can actually now add with just a few clicks rather than constructing multi-column layouts by adding a container, changing the direction and adding multiple inner containers. You can now just hover over your container here in the elements panel, click on this little layout icon, which is also available on every container on the canvas itself. In my case, I'm going to click here and then I can either insert a full width section. If I do this, you can see there's going to be a section with an inner container. This one is just simply a stretched container with an section HTML tag. but it saves you definitely some time. For the section element itself, yeah, we're actually going to provide this most likely in a not so distant update, just because it's such a commonly used feature. Also, because the container has a lot of defaults, a lot of flex settings, it has the width settings, it has padding settings, we are also going to provide a simple div element. It's just a div that you can use without any of the presets that come with the container, because there were a lot of different cases where people ran into issues trying to nest containers inside of containers, when really you only need the container if you want to have this sort of flex layout or you want to work with the query loop. Yeah, so div element is coming to Bricks, and also most likely a section element after that. The section element also depends on the nested element feature, which we're currently actually working on, so that one will take still a little bit more time. But once we introduce the nested elements, we can also roll out the section element. Okay, next up, I want to show you a little drag and drop magic. First of all, I'm going to probably remove my background image here. I'm going to change this to a simple color so it's a bit clearer. If I drag a new element onto the canvas on top of my container, you can now see this little blue dashed line, and this indicates that if I were to drop my element, it's gonna be dropped inside of this container. If I go outside of it, you can see it's no longer highlighted. And this is a really helpful indicator to just show you where you would drop your element as well. Escape, because I don't want to drop my icon in here. Adding new elements. Sometimes you have a more complex layout, a multi-column layout, where you don't have a lot of space on the canvas. It's really hard sometimes to just drop it in the right position. Usually in the structure panel, it's going to be much easier. So with our new Bricks native drag and drop solution, we can actually add new elements by just dragging them into the structure panel itself. So I can take my icon, and instead of dropping it on the canvas, I can just move it here over to the structure. And this way I can really easily just put it inside, in between my heading here and my button element. I release my mouse, and you can see it's now being added between my heading and my button, just like that. Super helpful, much easier than just to drop it somewhere on the canvas, go over to the structure panel and move it around again. This way you can just basically take it and drop it into the structure panel itself. Let's remove it and move on to the next feature, which is actually the ability to drag and drop text elements much easier. We're talking about headings here, basic text elements, rich text, the button itself. Prior to Bricks 1.4, you just edited the text right away. You just clicked in the text. There was no way that you can just take the text and drag it. You always need to go on this little pencil icon here, and then you could start dragging your element around. It still works, of course, but now you can actually go anywhere here on top of your heading element, for example, and then just start dragging it. Now, in order to edit the text, you just need to perform a double click, and then I can start typing in anything I want. Same for the button, and also same for the rich text and the basic text element. Moving on to the next feature, which is the ability to wrap an element inside of a container. So let's just say I added basic text here, and I want to put this inside of a container. Now, what am I going to do? Usually, I would put my container here, then I would take my element and I would drop it inside my container. Now I can continue editing. Now, while this works, it could be faster. And that's why we now provide the ability to wrap any element inside of a container simply by right-clicking on it, and then you just click on Wrap Container. You can also perform a keyboard shortcut, also part of our keyboard shortcut list. Where is it? Down here. Command Control Shift and P wraps the active element in a container. So if I were to select my basic text here, and now I hit Command Shift P, you will see that now my basic element has been wrapped in another container. Just like that, I can wrap elements. We can also really easy duplicate elements now. Previously, we could right-click on them and then you hit duplicate, or I think it was called clone, just like that. But maybe you're editing your heading here, you're done editing and you just want to duplicate it. Normally you would have to take your mouse, hover over the element, right click and duplicate. Now you can just finish editing it, and then you just hit Command Shift D, and this way I can really easily duplicate my element, just like that. Okay, those are two new keyboard shortcuts. We also have the ability to use our arrow keys with the keyboard shortcuts in order to navigate through our elements. So we can navigate through elements on the same level, and also go to a child level element or to the parent element itself. There's an explanation here. If you use the Command Control Shift arrow down, you can go down to the next element, arrow up to the previous, arrow to the right, go to the first child element, and arrow to the left, you edit the parent element. Now, if I were to just click Command Shift arrow down, you can see I'm on the first element here on the root level. Again, Command Shift arrow down brings me to the next element, which is this one here. If I press Command Shift arrow to the right, it brings me to my inner container. Command Shift right again brings me to the basic text. Command Shift arrow left, again the parent, left again brings me to the root container. This way you can navigate through your entire element structure just only using those arrow keyboard shortcuts. Talking about the structure panel, we actually have this, you probably noticed this by now, this level indicator here. If I'm editing my root container here, you can now see this indicator, making it much easier to determine the elements that are going to be affected here while you edit an element. So for my root container here, I have my heading and my button, and this indicator is telling me that they are part of this structure up here. If you work with custom CSS, you now also will see a little CSS indicator here. Let's just maybe change this basic text. I'm gonna give this a color red. Okay. Now I've added my custom CSS. You can see it's being applied, and you can see this little custom CSS indicator. This is really helpful to determine where a custom CSS change occurred. And if you click this little indicator, it brings you right into the custom CSS of the element that this little indicator belongs to. Really handy little feature. If you clear your custom CSS, you can see now this little indicator disappears. Now moving on to the CSS features in Bricks 1.4 in terms of global classes, we have some nice new additions. I'm going to show you first the ability to import and export global classes, really easy in Bricks 1.4. We just open our class, global class panel. You can see here I actually have almost 1,000 now, and we have this little export and this little import icon, similar to how we can import and export templates, color palettes. It's all the same concept. If you hit export here, you can just give your classes JSON file a name, and then it's going to be saved onto your computer. If you want to import such a JSON file, you can just click this little import icon, select the file from your computer, and then it's going to be imported into this installation right here. What you can also do once you have finished editing a global class, in order to prevent any accidental changes in the future, you can lock a class. Let me show you. Let's go back here to content. Let's take our test class, which right now only has this typography applied to it. And let's just say I'm finished editing. I want to prevent this from being edited by accident. What I can do now, I can just hover here over my class, and then I can click this lock icon. Now you can also see everything is a little bit grayed out here. I cannot edit this setting. I mean, I can see the color that's being applied, but I'm not able to reset anything or to add any other CSS here because this class is locked. You can also see the lock is closed. It has also a red color indicating that this is a locked class. If I want to continue editing this class, I just need to click here again. And as you can see now, I can see everything and I can adjust everything just like that. So as a general recommendation, if this happens to you a lot, that you edit those classes by accident, you can always just log them, save your changes. Next time you reload the builder, this class is gonna be locked. Okay. Now, Bricks also remembers the last class that you edited on an element. Like in my case now, I'm editing the heading with this test class. Then I go back to my button, which I haven't selected any class for. Then I go back to my heading, and you can see Bricks still remembers the class that I have selected here. Now this is not stored anywhere in a database, so next time you reload the builder, of course, this information will not be persistent. But yeah, while I'm editing and I change my classes here, Bricks is going to remember for every element which class you last edited, so you can just continue editing your class where you left off the last time. You can see now, go back here, test class, I go to my button, it's going to remember that I edited this class in the end. Now what you can also do when you have already an existing class and maybe you defined a style on an element, you can actually copy that style from the element into your global class. So let's just say I'm editing my text here and I change this to uppercase and text decoration. And now I actually want to use, actually make it a bit more apparent. Let's change the background color to this blue color. Okay, let's just say I want to take this style. So I want to copy it and I want to use it in one of my classes now. So I'm editing my heading. I go to this test class and I'm going to paste the style into it. As you can see now, the style has been applied and the background color now is part of this test class. Also, when you export a template, which includes a custom global class, this global class is going to be part of your template export. So when you import a template into another installation, it's going to import those classes and the class definitions as well. Also, in terms of performance, there was actually quite a big lag when you had a lot of classes. Like in my case now, you can see I have almost 1,000. So it took over a second actually until this opened up. So when working with classes or CSS frameworks here, it can actually cost you a lot of time. So this lag is also now fixed. You can see I have almost 1,000 classes and I click here. You can see how everything opens instantly and how I can quickly perform my search here in real time, just like that. So that has been fixed as well. Now another really cool time saver that I use all the time now, because I resize my container height, always using here this handle for the height and also the width. Prior to Bricks 1.4 was always in an increment of 1, so it's really hard to just get to a round number like let's say 400. You always need to, it takes some time to get really to the exact value. Now if I hold down Shift and I drag it, you can actually see that it increases in steps of 5. Now this works for resizing the container. Of course, I can also use VH here, so I want to use viewport height as a unit. But it also works with adjusting the element spacing. So if you want to adjust the margin, and let's just do the margin here of this container maybe. I hold down Shift, and you can see now I can increase my margin in steps of 5. This is also really handy. Saves you a lot of time to resize the container faster and also adjust an element's margin and padding on the canvas much faster and much more accurate than before. Okay, next up, what we also have now in Bricks in terms of conditions. There are some requests, so you're now able inside of your theme styles and your templates to apply a condition to a child page or a child term. So in my case now, I'm going to show you working with a page. So this is not a template, so I'm going to show you this on a theme style. Right now, the theme style is applied to the entire website, but let's just say I want to apply this only to this individual page here, which is called blank. Okay, you can see the new setting here already. So it's only going to be applied to this one page. I'm going to show you this first. Let's maybe change our headings to use uppercase. Okay, so you can see the theme style is being applied. Let's save it as well. And then let's go to a sub page. So this page here, it's the sub page of my blank page of this page. You can actually see this just to confirm that's really the case. Blank page, and then I have the sub page here, which is a sub page of this one. Now if I load this, you can see nothing is applied here in terms of theme styles. I'll also confirm nothing is applied. But now if I were to change this condition to use this on all of my child pages as well. Okay, let's save it as well. Let's reload it. And now you can see this theme style is being applied to my subpage 2. You can see here it's being applied to the page that I'm currently editing. Same goes also for archive pages. If you edit a template, you can apply this to any, let's say a child category, for example. That works as well. Now another feature that's actually quite handy, especially now in Bricks 1.4. I'm going to show you how you can unlink a global element. I'm going to show you a really cool way how you can create or use this global element for container to use it alongside CSS filters. So I'm first going to create my container here. Okay, I'm going to drop in a heading and a button, align it just like that. Nothing special here. Again, I'm just going to give it a background color. Now, in terms of CSS filters, we actually performed a change here in Bricks 1.4. And that is, let me resize this to something like this. Okay. If you apply a CSS filter now, let's say I change my saturation, you can see that the filter is now being applied to the container and to all of the child elements. This is actually the default behavior of a CSS filter. It's going to be applied to the element and all of the child nodes. Now, prior to Bricks 1.4, we did some magic in the background to basically generate an inner container for you, which then has the background image and the CSS filter applied. Now, going forward, Bricks 1.4 and everything beyond, you would have to do this manually. It's actually really easy once you perform the step that I'm about to show you. But yeah, just one of those helpers or like little tricks that we removed now from Bricks. And because it was more and more cases where this causing some issues with other class names, so we decided to basically take this custom functionality out of the builder. Okay, but let me show you how you can still accomplish applying the CSS filter to the background image itself only. So first of all, let me remove the filter, remove the background image. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to manually insert this container that I just talked about. So I just click on Add Container, make sure I move it at the beginning, and then I'm going to assign the background image to it, the same one that we just used. And then I want to make sure that it covers the entire area of my container here. So I can do this by taking it out of the normal element flow by setting the position to absolute, and then top 0, right 0, bottom 0, left 0. So now it spans the entire height and width of the parent container. And I can apply my filter now. And now you can see that the saturation is only applied to this container here. Let's just rename it. I'm just gonna call this CSS filter plus background. Okay, so it's a bit clearer now when I'm gonna create a global element from it. Actually, I think I already had one here. Let me remove this one. Okay, so all I need to do now to make this reusable is to, let me go to the content, right click, save it as a global element. So it's now saved. I can hit Command Shift E to go to the elements panel, and then I can either scroll down all the way to see it here, or I can just type in CSS, which is the one that we just created. Okay. Let me remove this one because otherwise it's already here. And then I'm gonna drag this one into my main container. I release it, and now you can see that how easily I was able to, just by using this global element, which I already have set up with my CSS filter and the background image, to put inside of any container on my page really. Now what I can do, I can just simply unlink it by editing my container, and then I click this little unlink. Okay, now it's unlinked, and then I can change my background image, or I can adjust my saturation. And then next time you need this anywhere else on your page, you can just insert a container. Okay, go down, add your CSS filter, global element here, and then simply unlink it and just change the background image and the filter. And that way you can use this in the same way that you would probably use a template. So the same thing here would be possible by just simply saving this container as a template. So it's really just up to your own personal preference. For me, I think it's easier in here. So you can just have it as a global element, and then you have it in your elements panel always. You don't need to open up any other pop-up here. It's basically behaves like a normal element. You unlink it, and that way you're able to basically use this sort of global elements template concept to apply a background image with a custom filter anywhere on your page. Now, next optimization that I want to show you, something that has also gotten more and more attention lately, is the ability to locally host your Google Fonts. So now inside of Bricks, you can disable Google Fonts altogether. And this is either possible via a filter, but I'm going to show you the setting because that's much easier and basically has exactly the same effect. So first of all, let me just maybe close this subpage here. Let's remove this container just like that. Let's save this page, which, as you can actually probably tell, has a Google font applied to it. Let's check it out. My heading have a Google font here, Poppins. That's a really popular Google font. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to disable Google fonts by going to my settings, performance, and then I have this disable Google fonts setting here. So what I can do now, you save your settings. And now if I'm going to visit my page here on the front end, you will see that this font will no longer be loaded. It will just use the default web safe font. So I go to the front end, and as you can see for the heading here, my font is no longer being used. Okay. If you were to inspect this, you can see it still says Poppins because that's the setting, but there is no Poppins font, so it's just gonna fall back to the web safe font. In the builder, this is also apparent. Let's just reload the builder. And you can see now the font is no longer being loaded. If I'm actually going to have a look at my settings, I can still see it because you can, at any time you could just change your mind and you can enable them. We don't want to delete any of your theme style settings just because you set this setting here. But you can see inside of the builder that the Google fonts has been disabled. So it recognizes this is a Google font and the Google fonts have been disabled. Now this also works with custom fonts. Let's say you have assigned a custom font and then you deleted the custom font. It's gonna say that the custom font has not been found. So it works both for custom fonts and also for Google fonts. Now if you disable the Google fonts and you wanna use them locally, what I would actually recommend, and there's an article in the Bricks Academy here, you just need to search for custom fonts and then scroll down. There are some instructions here on how you can self-host your Google fonts. So all you need to do really is just to download the Google font files. If you go to fonts.google.com and you want to download the font file, the problem is it's only going to provide you with a TTF file. But for modern browsers, you actually want to make sure you use the WAV2 or the WAV file format. In order to get those, there's actually a really cool project called the Google Web Fonts Helper. So if you open this link, it will bring you to this project. And here you can search for any font. So in my case, if I want to self-host Poppins, I can just click on Poppins. And then you can see here, actually you can select the font weights that you want to download. It also shows you the formats that's going to be downloaded. If you just only want to have modern browser support, it would only download those two formats. Click on download files. It will be downloaded to your computer. And then inside of Bricks, all you need to do is go to custom fonts. And then you can add your custom font, the Google font that you just downloaded. And that way you can self-host it without having any problems in terms of GDPR. Okay, really easy way to accomplish that in just a few minutes. Now, because of all of the changes that we made with the element IDs and classes, I want to show you one feature that we provide inside of Bricks, which is called the converter. There's also information here in the changelog. So if you have written any custom CSS and you're using any of the now obsolete classes like Bricks -container, there was a list up here. Okay, if you use this anywhere in your custom CSS, either in your global CSS, in your page settings, if you use custom CSS for individual elements, you don't have to manually rewrite those class names. That's what this converter is for. And we'll see, we'll probably maybe add a little bit more functionality to this, because basically really nice and easy way to do a search and replace in your database. But right now it's only taking into account those class names that changed now in Bricks 1.4. I'm going to show you real quick how we can use this new feature. I think I have some custom code here. Yeah. Okay, this is actually not doing anything anymore in Bricks 1.4 because we renamed this Bricks container. It's actually now called BRX container. So of course, here in this one instance, I could just do this manually, but you might have this somewhere sitting in the custom CSS of one of your pages, the page settings maybe, or on the custom CSS of like individual elements all throughout your site. So it's really hard to do this yourself if you don't want to write any SQL comments. But you can use the converter here because it's making changes to your database. It's looking for certain classes and then replaces them with the new syntax. I would definitely recommend that you make a full site backup before you run this converter, just in case, just to be sure. It's also marked as experimental, so just that you know. If you click here on this link, it also opens up the Bricks Academy and you can find more information how the whole thing works and what is being converted. Okay, now let's run it. Okay. And similar to the way that you can regenerate your CSS files, you will here see everything that's happening. So in my case, my global settings have been updated. To be exact, the custom CSS inside of the global settings. So now if I reload the settings, okay, and I go to custom CSS, you can now see that my Bricks container class has been renamed to Bricks container, just like that, without me having actually to do any manual search and replaces here. All right, so this was more of a focus really on all the little small improvements here. I hope you enjoyed this kind of introduction to a little bit more advanced workflow. If you build more and more websites with Bricks, I think a lot of those features come in really handy. We keep adding and refining the user interface, user experience, all of those features that you keep also recommending and upvoting on the idea board. So I appreciate everyone's input on those. And yeah, make sure to download the latest Bricks 1.4 and let us know how it's going.